Hey folks, welcome to the Lifecycle Marketing for Fintech Growth webinar. I'm your host, Cody Stover. It's sunrise here in Portland, Oregon. Maybe it's sunset wherever you are in the world, but wherever that is, we're happy to have you here, taking a little time out of your busy holiday schedule to jump on here and hopefully grab a few tips on lifecycle marketing and fintech growth. We're joined by Lukas Baar, Growth Marketing Manager at High, and we're going to get a little bit more into him and his bio here in just a second. I think I'm really excited for this topic because I know as consumers, anybody in the audience, if you're a investor in stocks, if you're an investor in crypto, maybe you simply bought a home in this last year and kind of dealt with mortgage rates going up and down, you know that the fintech market and the finance market in general kind of has these peaks and valleys that we've all been dealing with. But I think for audience members who are marketers, either for a fintech or for another company, this is lifecycle marketing, such a valuable topic, especially in times where there are those peaks and valleys and you want to try to keep somebody finding value in your product, keep them retained. So Lukas, really excited to jump in here.
Me too. Me too. Thanks. And yeah, let me start off just by saying thanks for the invitation and also thanks for the great ongoing collaboration that we're having between Customer.io and High.
Awesome.
It's been really great.
I was going to say you kind of bumped me into this next slide here where we see the High logo up there. Customer.io, if nobody has heard of us before, we are a cross-channel customer engagement platform. So you basically are able to consolidate any kind of message that you want to send to your customers into Customer.io and then send it from there. So you can build campaigns across email, push notifications, SMS, in-app messages. You can also do a lot of things with data automations. Some folks even have been able to replace Zapier by being able to build data automations that adapt and react based on different triggers, those sorts of things. So as you can see there on the right, it's our pleasure to work with High and Lukas, their logo there. And then if you're not in fintech, that's okay. Customer.io is basically a platform where you can send in your data and then it's based on what you want to do with it to be able to trigger any kind of message for your business. So you can see we work with SaaS companies, Notion, Buffer, EdTech, DataCamp is right there. So whatever industry you're in today, we're happy to have you and excited to get into it. So really quick, last piece of context on Customer.io. This is where the magic happens. So Lukas is probably no stranger to this view in the interface where you are in our visual workflow builder, dragging and dropping emails, push notifications, logic-based statements of, did they do this? Then let's send them this message. Did they do that? Then let's send them this message. So for folks who maybe are coming to this webinar without that context, jump in after this to a trial and just poke around. This is probably the most fun place to, in my opinion, to learn how to use Customer.io and see how it all works. But without further ado, Lukas, again, we're really excited to have you here. Before we get into lifecycle marketing stuff, talk to me about High. What is your product or service? And then also kind of what's your role there?
Sure. And just one more time, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. Can just start off by introducing myself really quick. So my name is Lukas. I work at High. And I work there as a senior marketing manager. And one of my major responsibilities is our customer engagement strategy and execution. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to Customer.io. And because I just said I work at High, so I'm not sure if we actually coined the term, but we're a Web3 neobank. So simply put, we're a digital bank for digital assets, as well, in addition to that, to traditional currencies. So, and just like a neobank, we offer payments and saving products, uh, but also focus on convenience and simplicity to use for our members. But then also in addition to that, we offer a crypto exchange and the option to trade there right in our app. And currently, what we're doing is we're launching our own High debit card in partnership with MasterCard that's going to allow people to spend, again, both crypto and traditional currencies at over 90 million merchants worldwide. I feel like I should also mention that because you just went over Customer.io and everything, that I personally I'm a big fan of Customer.io. And actually, when we were looking for an automated marketing platform, what we were really looking for was autonomy for us as the marketing team, not having to rely on engineers for launching and delivering a marketing campaign. And so I still remember I was talking to our CTO who had used Customer IO in one of his previous lives, and the way he put it was that he wants to help us help ourselves. And after having used Customer IO for a while, that's exactly what they're doing and what it is doing and why we're so happy with it in the end.
I love that. Yeah, and I experienced that as a myself as a user of Customer IO as I build out campaigns and things like that. Like using data points that I otherwise wouldn't be able to as a non-technical user, and then be able to access those, pull those in, use them to personalize or to send a different message to somebody versus somebody else.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, I feel the same way as you do there. But yeah, thanks for that shout out too. Okay, so thanks for the
Well
little
earned.
background on Hi. I appreciate it. Um, we'll get to know more context about Hi as we go, and audience members, please chime in the chat and questions as we go if we want to dig deeper onto little points. But next, I kind of, just for anybody who has just joined, I want to set a quick agenda for where we're going to go today topic wise. So the golden question is, in this changing fintech market, how can brands activate, engage, and retain customers over time? So we're going to hopefully answer that by the end of this call. But where we're going to go topic wise is we'll cover lifecycle marketing strategies. So all the way from onboarding, how do we get people started in a product, to retention. We'll quiz Lukas on cross-channel strategy. When should you use email? When should you use push? And when does it matter? And then we'll also scatter in some experiments, learnings, use cases. Lukas has prepared a few interesting learnings that he's had using Customer IO. So we'll zoom into some of those more detailed stories there throughout the webinar as we go. All right, so Lukas, before I start quizzing you on marketing stuff, let's get a little bit more context just on the finance market in general. And specifically on this next slide, we'll see this is the total cryptocurrency market cap as of, I think I pulled it 2 days ago, as of the 28th of November. So maybe it's bumped up or down a little bit since then, but we can kind of see the general shrinkage or decline this year in the overall market, but lots of peaks and valleys all through there where investors are probably trying to ride that wave up to the peak as we go. So I'd love to get your thoughts just kind of on the finance and the crypto market in general. How has the economic conditions this last year affected your audience? And what are some things that folks in the audience who are maybe marketers themselves should consider when engaging their customers in this landscape?
Yeah, so the current bear market has almost changed everything, I would say, but there's a few topics that it's touched even more than others. So for our platform Hi, it's envisaged as a platform that's really accessible to all, no matter where people are in their crypto journey. So we're trying to make it very easy for people to get into crypto. Now the thing is, if you didn't get into crypto during the bull market until middle of 2021, you're most likely not going to get into it now that we're in a bear market. And that's also something that we're seeing in the landscape, that user acquisition efforts are much more focused on users that already have experience in crypto compared to completely new users. And in crypto, things move really fast, as you can see just by looking at the graph. You can really say that right now we're in the eye of the storm, and with the recent fallout of FTX, things are still unraveling, but things that we can see is that there's a noticeable push and increase in demand for especially transparency and decentralization. So now more than ever, it's really important to communicate transparently, frequently, and honestly. And talking about the decentralization and especially decentralized finance or DeFi, I think this poses very interesting challenges for marketers, because some things, like for example identity verification, that are considered quite normal, but they don't necessarily align with the spirit of DeFi. So that's really just interesting to look at, and questions you have to ask yourself when doing user acquisition here. And Something that's also really different in crypto is that open feedback, because it's so easy for people to communicate directly with the leaders of a project. And this two-way communication is where for us, customer IO really comes into play. Because for us, it's really important to give people the freedom to choose how and where they communicate with us. There can be email, push notification, or Telegram, for example. There's really a lot of options there. And also before I was mentioning transparency and just the increasing importance of that, especially now in the bear market and all of because there's so many big name players that have just fallen down recently. There's FTX, Celsius, Terra Luna, to just to name a few. And because in the end, you're trying to convince people to deposit their money or the crypto assets that they are holding into your platform. And trust is really essential there. And for that trust to be maintained or built, people just demand transparency. So something that we do to tackle that is we publish a transparency report every month in which we go over the latest numbers, share that with our community, tell them what we're working on, and also what the progress on our most or the upcoming features like the debit card, for example, is. And yeah, also something we use Customer IO for, and that would be difficult to imagine without having Customer IO.
Yeah, thanks for the thoughts there. I think for folks in the audience, whether or not you're in fintech, I love the transparency report. That seems like something that any business could adopt, just to keep that open line of communication with customers, keep the feedback coming in, keep sharing, so that they feel part of, they know what's happening. And Lucas, I think the other thing as you talk through that is, no matter if it's a bear market or a bull market, wherever you are, I think the thing that seems like it never changes is people value their money. It's something intimate to them, and they want to take
Yeah.
good care of it and grow it or defend it. And so that's where I think, regardless of the market, it's so cool that we'll always have a need for good fintech products, because that's the thing that people are going to need to do that, no matter what the market conditions are. So, love kind of your thoughts there on trust building, transparency, and just communication being even more important during a bear market, maybe too.
Yeah, I guess it's difficult to say that because, of course, trust, and especially in finances, is always important, but you really do see how it's getting even more important in times like this.
Definitely. All right, so let's jump over, now that we have kind of the context on high and the market. Let's get into the marketing stuff. So we're going to start with onboarding and activation. I know you kind of mentioned a little bit there when you were talking about the context about identity verification, um, KYC, as it's referenced in some fintechs. But I think we're all guilty of downloading a fintech app at some point, or maybe joining a digital bank, and we have the best intentions in that first moment, but maybe we fail to finish signing up or completely verify our identity or start using it to the fullest extent. So I want to really talk about this onboarding activation phase. And actually, the audience voted that this was their biggest priority currently right now too. Retention was a close number two. So I know the onboarding activation, definitely a hot topic here. So Lucas, um, with KYC and verification processes being such an important step for many fintechs and companies in general, honestly, how does the verification process work for you at High, and how do you use messaging to kind of nurture people through some of those stages?
So I just want to start off by saying we're really not reinventing the wheel when it comes to identity verification. We work with a partner called Sum and Substance, who are the market leaders in identity verification. Just so as you said, so we're able to give people the best experience when it comes through to going through all of that process. Because as you said, like some people just drop it midway. So the first priority really is to make it as easy as possible. Um, Identity verification, because there are challenges that come with it. The two biggest challenges here for us would be volume and location. To talk a little bit more about volume, so we verified over 1 million identities in a year, and the demand for people to verify their identity is, luckily, I guess, really high. And that's definitely a challenge, but not an insurmountable one. And then the second one would be would be location, because it's very different verifying someone's identity from Italy, for example, to, let's say, Nigeria, because different parts of the world have different identification documentation. So that's always something that for some regions can be more challenging than for others. And when we talk about marketing communication and what we can do here, I think it's really important to remember that the human side of things, because it can be a very frustrating experience for people to just get rejected, because that's something that happens. And that doesn't always mean that that's happening because someone's a criminal, but that could be an indicator, could be that the credit score just isn't there, unfortunately. So really giving people the option to talk to a real person and being able to contact support there is something that we've seen really pay off, because for some people it's a more lengthy process than for others. And I think, generally speaking, about identity verification, so for retail investors, it luckily hasn't been a big issue prior to the bear market, where DeFi was rising up so much, because people understand that this is something we're doing in order to prevent bad actors and prevent fraud. So they have been really understanding there, luckily. But the way we look at it going forward is that some products and services are going to require identity verification, but some won't. And just to give a quick examples, for example, if you're just sending some tokens to one of your friends, there's probably something that you can do without verifying your identity. But if you want to spend crypto with your debit card, we need to make sure that you actually are who you say you are.
Yeah. And I think as you're saying this too, like maybe it's a point of friction occasionally for somebody who's maybe they've heard about your app and they download it and they want to just start right now. They want to 5 minutes from now, they want to be spending. But at the end of the day, like you were saying there, it's a better user experience if everyone goes through this, just because you're more confident with what's happening next, and you can really be a better investor after that point. So yeah, I love how you kind of approach it.
In many cases, it's also regulatory just requirement that we need to adhere to.
Right. And let's say on this slide you see at the far right, I actually went through the onboarding or the identity verification process here, and at the end I did get into the app after my identity was verified, and so that's where I want to jump in now. So let's talk about onboarding. Somebody has completed this process, they've verified their identity, they're into their account. Talk me through your current welcome flow. What are those first conversions that you're looking for from your users? And yeah, again, how do you use messaging to kind of help their behavior forward in this case?
Sure, let's do it. Very important piece of context here. So the way people engage with our platform, and something that we've seen, is that most conversions actually happen after 30 days. So the biggest goal that we have for our onboarding campaign is for people to get more familiar with Hi and our products, and for us to educate them about what we're offering. So it's really not the case that like every email has a goal, but not every goal is necessarily a CTA. One example for an email with a CTA, for example, and really educating people there will be the first email called Checklist to Get Started. And it is at the end exactly that, like us providing people with the first things they need to begin their journey with Hi. With one example being a link to their local language community. But then if you look at our second email, which is an example for an email without a CTA, that's a personal welcome message from our founder, Sean, where the focus is much more on people getting to know us apart from our products and services, and putting everything into perspective. And fun fact, that email, the second one, the welcome message, is actually by far the one that's performing the best. No matter if it comes to open rates, all metrics, it is by far the most popular.
Oh, interesting. Is it any reason why that one's the most popular that you can surmise? Is it like a plain text kind of style email that looks very personal, or any thoughts there?
The style is much more minimalistic than a very marketing-y email. There's not a lot that there's no buttons there, for example. There's, as I said, no links. We're not asking people to do anything really in that email. And I think we also have a really good subject line here. Sorry, I'm afraid I still can't see your screen, but
Oh darn, the
if
slides are down for you.
if my memory serves correct, the subject line is something of like, I want to welcome you personally to Hi and from Sean. We
Yeah,
also, for example, we use a different send address for that one. So to really personalize that experience there.
that's great. And also, Lucas, kudos to you for speaking on this with the slides for some reason not showing up for you. So even better,
No
even
problem.
more impressive. But we're looking at the onboarding flow here, and
Mhm.
we're kind of zoomed into just the first couple days. And one thing I wanted to ask for folks in the audience who are maybe looking at their onboarding flow, or maybe they're building one for the first time, what is or how long is High's total onboarding flow? I think you mentioned like 30 days.
Yeah,
Conversions
it's
sometimes happen. And how
10.
often do you send messages?
Yeah, so it's 10 emails in 30 days. What we're not doing is send one email every 3 days. Because what we found to be working the best is to actually send more emails in the beginning, right after people signed up, when they're most eager to engage with us, to learn about us, and then gradually increase the time and delay here. Just because we also don't want to bombard people with messages. There's one exception here. So in case of a big product launch, for example, that broadcast would also go to people who currently go through that campaign. Just because it's important for us for members to be up to date and not having to wait until they get to that email, for example. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are like, I think you mentioned like some of this is education, some of it is just brand welcoming, like the message from Sean. Um, how often, if somebody in the audience is building out an onboarding series and maybe their goal is to get someone to, I don't know, take whatever first action is the ultimate goal. So for customer IO, we want somebody to maybe start a trial, let's say.
Mhm.
How would you recommend, like, how often would you recommend asking for the sale kind of, or like throwing in a CTA that's more, hey, do this action that, ultimately is your goal, but is that every once in a while? Is it just at the end, or how would you recommend that process work?
Yeah, I think if we think about it in terms of an onboarding flow, asking for people to take that action probably wouldn't be something that I would put in the first email. Like I think the first email is something that I would be much more general for me, welcoming people to joining Customer IO. And then in the second email, go for the hard sell, so to speak, which again isn't really something that we are doing, going for a hard sell. But I of course also understand that sometimes that's just a goal.
Yeah, so kind of sprinkle it in versus every time, or too frequently right at the start, maybe a good takeaway.
Yeah, I agree.
Perfect. And how are you measuring success during this onboarding flow? Is there kind of a conversion goal that you've set, or what again is that action that you're trying to drive at the end of this?
Yes, so with, of course, everything I just talked about, the main goal mainly being education, we do, of course, have a conversion goal attached to this campaign and Customer IO, which for us is for people to become a Basic Plus member. I'm going to be talking more about that in a bit, but what it is basically is for people to either make a deposit or purchase our token. And yeah, but again, because most conversions, we know that they happen later. Uh, we are not too concerned about this, but of course, conversion rates are still something that we are looking at and also trying to improve. It's just that we're maybe looking more at different stages after onboarding to go for that sell. Yeah.
And for somebody in the audience who's maybe trying to choose what their conversion goals should be, how did you choose that basic membership as the goal? Was it something that was closely tied to long-term success, or is it more of just a good first activation step that has to happen either way?
Yeah, I think a good way to do it would be to think about high value actions that you want users to take, which in our case is maybe a little bit easier than for others because after you did your first purchase or your first deposit, that's when you have that starting capital, so to speak, that you can then use to really get started and use our products. It could be because with that starting capital, you could make your first trade, you could use one of our savings products, or you could purchase our token, which for us really is the cornerstone and what's in the center of our ecosystem with people holding our token.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for kind of talking us through. I know again you didn't have the slide in front of you, but I can tell that it's
It's
something
okay.
that you know inside and out.
I have it in my head. Don't
Like
worry.
I dream about it at night, so it's no slide, no problem.
Quite yes.
Well, yeah, again, thank you for taking us through this level of detail. I want to jump over into some more use cases, kind of more middle life cycle stage, where I know we have some other examples here. But let's say jumping away from onboarding and more into the next stage, let's say we're in this stage where we're trying to grow engagement, grow product adoption. For some companies, maybe this is measured in what's the lifetime value or how many monthly or daily active users we have. So getting into somebody who's been onboarded, but they're ready for that next step. Actually, on this next slide, I've kind of modeled it using a customer segment, which is a way that a lot of companies kind of use our segmentation builder to capture people at these specific moments. So just to kind of talk through the quick segment to set the stage, and then I want to hear from you, Lukas. But the segment shows, let's say somebody has completed their account setup, they performed a deposit, so they have actually put money into their account of a certain amount, and then let's say that they're one of our mobile app users, or one of your mobile app users. They're on it. They have an iOS or an Android device, so they're kind of sitting in that completed onboarding stage. What behaviors are you looking to get someone to do next at this point, and how do you use messaging to kind of grow their usage of High?
So if I imagine that scenario, what we want to do here is really help people or this person understand how to use their assets and what to do with it, going to the different products that we're providing here, and also going back to sending educational material to people. What I just really want to throw in here really quick, because I think it fits, is our community. So one thing that, because it falls exactly in that stage of the life cycle, because one thing that happens when someone purchases our token is that we use customer IO to send an in-app notification where we give people a link to our buyers community. It's an unmoderated community, and how you can think about it, it's a group full of people that all landed there by doing the action of buying our token. And so what we can observe is it's people giving advice to each other, and like sometimes they make spreadsheets. It is really cool, to be honest. And having this conversation again, giving people the option and the freedom to choose what communication tools they want to use and expand that a little bit through that. And then other actions that we would like to drive here, or we look at people in this stage, would be their membership tier. And that's something that we're of course trying to drive by providing people with information on, or giving people a reason why they should upgrade their tier. I'm going to talk about that in a second, sorry. And just explain different benefits and what they need to do in order to get them.
Yeah, perfect. And you prefaced it beautifully. We're now on the membership tier slide, but yeah, what is are people in the audience who maybe also have a subscription product, or they have a product with membership tiers, or just like different plans that folks are on that maybe require different messaging? How do you personalize messaging based on those membership tiers, and why does that make a difference, I guess?
Yeah, so I look at these messages there in two types of ways. So there's one message that's notifying people of a change in their tier, for which we mainly use push notification. And then there's the second type of message that not only tells you which tier you are, but also what it means that you're this tier, what benefits you can expect. Um, and so for us, it's really important to notify people as soon as they reach the tier, which for us is possible because if the attribute membership tier changes, because they're in the campaign, they get sent a push notification and email immediately, and we don't have to worry about that. Yeah, and another scenario where this is really important would be, for example, because changes in membership tiers aren't always positive because they can also downgrade. And being there and sending a message at that moment, because it's not always intentional. Sometimes people aren't aware that they're being downgraded. That can really be the final thing to nudge people back into doing the action of upgrading again, which for us is a very high value action.
Yeah, it sounds like getting that message to them at the right moment is part of the equation here.
Yeah, it really is, because like if we would be late with that, like our community would be very quick to call customer service or something and ask what's up, which in the end is a good thing. But ideally they don't have to do that, and we are there right at the moment where it happens.
Yeah. For somebody who in the audience who maybe is thinking about how do I not over message my user, or actually more specifically, which channel should I use at each, at each part of the customer life cycle? I've heard you mention in-app messages to help people join community, push notifications, also email. Are those the primary channels you're using? And when would you recommend using one versus the other, or does it depend?
Yeah, so we actually we thought about this quite a lot, and where we arrived at the end is to use push notification again to notify people for all of these changes immediately, which especially in a downgrade is very important to be on time there. And another thing here that we thought about quite a lot is, should people go through this campaign more than once? Should we send someone a message if someone like reaches a tier a second time? Should we send the message again? Um, and concerns that we had there in the beginning were like, are people going to unsubscribe because they're getting too many messages? And is it even worth sending it more than once? So we ran a test on that. And what we saw in the end is people did actually upgrade, um, which actually happened after the email that people received. Um, and unsubscribe rates stayed low, luckily, which is why in the end we decided that yes, it really does make sense to tell people when they reach a tier every single time instead of just the first time.
Yeah, this is a really interesting test. We're on the slide now too that's showing off kind of that increase in conversion rates and unsubscribe rates staying low. I think myself, as somebody who does some email marketing or just some messaging automation, thinking like, oh man, like I need to come up with a different message every time, because I don't want them to be able to pull up their whole inbox and be able to see that maybe one message matches the other. I think like as I'm listening to you talk through this experiment, is kind of realizing that that's maybe not user behavior. Like they're more interested that you are in fact letting them know a crucial thing that's valuable to their experience, and letting them know each time, rather than saying, hey, this is the same message, I'm going to unsubscribe or something like that. So really interesting that kind of you ran this test and found that.
Yeah, I almost started to think about it more of a transactional message, sort of like a
Mm,
receipt instead of a marketing message, because that way, like you understand why people aren't bothered by it, because it really showed that they weren't.
yeah, and I'm guessing those messages were pretty short, concise, and to the point, or versus something that's lengthier and harder to digest quickly, where they kind of like a transactional in the content too.
Yeah, exactly. Especially the push notifications. And then for the email, that one is more for, okay, what can I do now that I'm a gold member? What
Mm-hmm.
what perks do I get now? Yeah.
And I think if I'm going to get a message more than once to an email, and it's reminding me of value or more value that I could have, I feel like as a consumer too, that's a great email to get more than once, because hey, if you're not using the full value, then you find something new that you can be using. Perfect. Like that's an improvement in product experience too.
Yeah, I agree. It's better than a bad message.
All right, let's go into retention here, in this next life cycle stage. And this is actually our final one, before we get to some Q&A here at the end, in about 10 minutes. But before we do, so inevitably, I think, as life cycle marketers, we hope that 100% of people activate, and we can retain 100% of the people. But obviously, that's not the ideal world that we live in. People downgrade or they fall inactive for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's like we were just saying, maybe they weren't finding enough value, or they didn't find their way to value efficiently enough. Maybe they just literally forgot, or like we talked about in last month's mobile webinar, maybe they just needed more space on their iPhone, and so they had to delete a couple apps just because they wanted to take a photo, and their memory was full on their phone. So let's talk about retention here. Lucas, what behaviors kind of indicate to you that somebody maybe is at risk of inactivity or churn? And again, what's your messaging strategy at that point?
So just to clarify here, churn and the messages you just talked about so far haven't been our highest priority, because we've been blessed with a very low churn rate due to our project being much more long-term focused, and that's something our community knows. But when the churn is happening, what we're looking for is to make it, funnily enough, as easy for them to go away as possible. So we're looking for it to be very safe, secure, for people to offload their assets, and giving them the peace of mind that their confidential data is being handled right. And then, of course, to keep the door open should they return. But what you talked about, that what we're doing preemptively, at the moment, not as much, because we're more focused on those earlier stages in the life cycle compared to the last ones.
Yeah. If for somebody in the audience who maybe is more focused on retention, just hypothetically, like what kind of data points would you start to look at to kind of like identify where those moments are, or where you need to jump in? Do you have any kind of process of how you'd approach that, or how you'd recommend somebody approach finding out where the retention moments are?
Yeah, so I think it's probably different for every company, but for us, if you look, for example, at the data for what assets people hold, I think that's something that you can really read a lot into. So for example, if somebody, thinking about churn now, if somebody would be withdrawing repeatedly, that would be my number one red flag, that he's about to churn indefinitely and withdraw all of their assets. So that's something that where we would want to come here and send a message to get back into people's good graces.
Yeah.
But then also to keep making it, like, letting people know that if they want to leave, they can. And we're going to make that process as easy, uncomplicated, and safe for them as possible.
Yeah, that's I love that shout out there, and I feel like that's customer experience at its finest. Of even when you've decided to leave, we're going to be helpful, versus just we of course we want to win you back, but I think somebody in a previous webinar a couple months ago was talking about the same thing of sometimes it's okay to not fight churn at every moment. Sometimes it's letting it happen, being very helpful in that process, and then also understanding why they're maybe leaving, so that when you re-engage them months down the line, you kind of have a data point that the reason why, and you can help them back that much easier. Or if it's something where they just didn't have time to really set the product up this month, maybe that's great. Like maybe then when you win them back, it's just finding them staying in their inbox, so that at that right moment when they do have time, or they're re-inspired, maybe they just read a book on crypto and now they're re-inspired, they're ready to go, and you're top of mind and first thing. So I love kind of how you described your approach there too.
No, I think you made a great point there, because, like, as I was saying earlier, things in crypto move very fast, and I think that the more difficult we make it for someone to leave, the less likely they are to actually come back to us once another bull market hits, for example. And as you say, staying on top of mind, especially if people decide to go back into investing, that's something that's really valuable.
Yeah, want to get into one more topic here before we jump into Q&A, and that has to do with kind of a global audience. I think at Customer O, we have companies that use our product all over the world, literally every continent, every time zone. And so, we have folks who are speaking a lot of different languages. I know for Hi, that's a similar thing for you. But I think you talked before we jumped on this webinar that your audience at Hi speaks, or you engage your audience in 10 different languages. And so I just want to know, maybe for folks in the audience too, who have a global audience, or who maybe even are just managing just a couple different languages that their audience speaks, how are you messaging your users in their different languages? How does that personalization work, and what have you found has been the experience there?
Just really quick before we start, I'm happy we're at this topic now, because localization is one of my favorite topics here, and especially the interplay with Customer IO. So how we do it, and it goes back to what I was saying before, giving people the freedom to choose how they want to communicate with us. In many cases, that means in their native language. So that's something that we really put a lot of emphasis on, and that we go a lot of effort through to make that possible, because we got a bunch of very great in-house translators. But we are also, like, to make all of that happen, but we are seeing it pay off when it comes to improved engagement. We're measuring open rates, click rates, and also just the overall user friendliness. So I'm not sure if you're showing what you're showing right now, but I'm just going to assume it's the right one, because you're great at what you're doing.
We're on the multi-language slide. Yep.
Perfect. Thanks. So what we can really see is when we send a message that's being translated to everybody who speaks that language, open rates are much higher generally than they are when we send a more general message that's being sent in English to everybody. And then there's also the user friendliness factor that's really not that easy to put into numbers. So that it's really effort that's worth putting in, if you ask me.
Yeah, and we're sitting on the slide that's showing those open rates, across different languages. I believe there's IT, so that Italian, maybe there's ES, Spanish, and then we have French and Japanese, I believe. And then at the top, we have the baseline general send for this whole email. So yeah, is that what does it look like for a marketer too, to be able to look at the differences in each language? I mean, that's something that's a little bit more difficult probably if you aren't separating languages out like this or in this exact same format.
Yeah,
how has that kind of affected your approach?
Yeah, it's just as you're saying, like analyzing it is almost as interesting, because, or even more so maybe, because not only is it nice to see a high open rate, but you then also see, okay, people in Germany really like this topic. That's really a product that they're more interested in than other markets maybe. And then this can also help inform future messaging strategy, and just in itself is really valuable.
Yeah, I again, Lucas, I appreciate you kind of sharing screenshots of different tests and use cases you run. I think personally, again, I love coming to these webinars and watching this kind of stuff when we get these really specific learnings and findings. So number one, I really appreciate you bringing this level of detail. And I think one thing too for the audience, we actually talked about this again, and I'm referencing back to previous webinars, but somebody was mentioning how personalization doesn't necessarily have to be this, big magic design change or something that is really like, I don't know, a niche change inside your email that pulls in some specific number. It might just be like getting the message at the right time and in the right language might be the first two most impactful steps to, doing good personalization. It doesn't have to be some fancy design change. It might just be making sure that your user can read it and they get it in a moment where they're willing to read it. Have you seen anything else personalization wise that's worked well and maybe is easy to implement for the audience?
Just really quickly on what you just said, I really couldn't agree more that it's much more about the timing and what you're saying in the email, then little tidbits of personalization. Like it's pretty standard nowadays to use the first name in an email. But as you said, timing in the end is just so much more important. And that's not, it's nice to have, but it's not really what it's about to see my first name on the top of an email. But yeah, for other personalization, when you're asking, it the three big ones that we look at for personalization here is the membership tier. Also, again, because timing is really what we're looking for here. And then the other one, now in the opposite way of how I was talking about it earlier, would be the looking at what assets people hold and really understanding that there's a lot you can read into here. Because, for example, if we see someone repeatedly buying Matic, for example, we can then conclude that they're probably much more interested in an upcoming partnership that we have. So um, that's the ones that we're mainly looking at the moment. But the big one here is still language, just to provide this baseline of making sure our audience actually understands our email.
Yeah, I think sometimes I think back to like before the time of email or before the time of even the internet and thinking, let's imagine somebody is coming to the market. They always buy bread on a Saturday. And does it make sense to walk up to them on a Wednesday and say, hey, do you want to buy noodles or something else? No, if you're the person at that little market, you know that this person has a need for bread on a Saturday. So you should just ask them on Saturday if they need bread. So this is, a strange example I'm bringing up, but I think about it, it really helps me put me in the mindset of when I'm sending out this email, what do I know about the person and how can I just simply use that to help make it, keep them going in the right direction versus distract them towards something else.
Yeah,
So I don't know
exactly.
why my mind jumps to these old school examples, but it seems
No,
really a simple thing across the board.
I think it's a perfect example that shows how past behavior really is a good indicator for future behavior. And I
Yeah.
really like your point about why would you distract someone when you instead could, like what you just said.
Yeah. It's almost
I
like
really like that.
you shouldn't try to wow somebody with personalization. You should just show that you understand what they need. And maybe it all comes down to understanding. As I'm saying this out, I'm more telling myself, keep focusing on this, Cody. Keep focusing.
No, but I'm with you there because it's in the end it's not about me showing off that, oh, I can put a first name here if I want to.
Right.
In the end, like what you're trying to do is you're trying to increase value for a customer, which you could argue you're doing by putting the name here, but it's it's not the most important thing.
Right. Yeah. Actually, our customer IO earlier this year, we acquired a company called Parcel, which makes it easy for email developers to create emails and write code and find bugs a lot easier than in other HTML editors. I think anybody who does email knows that the HTML and the coding is a little bit different than sometimes your basic website code because you're rendering a bunch of different inboxes. What I'm really getting to by bringing that up here is Naomi, our marketer who works on Parcel. She actually, in their first welcome email, um, messes up the liquid for first name on purpose, just as a joke of like, hey, this isn't personalization, but we're making a little joke here that all email marketers can relate to. So love your points
I like
there.
that.
That was
I
just a
like
little side tidbit, but Lukas, for the sake of time, I want to make sure we have a couple minutes here for questions at the end. But before we do, for anybody in the audience, like we've been talking about a lot of customer IO use cases. So if you are wanting to see more of customer IO, an easy next step, hop on our website. You can start a trial or start ask for a demo if you'd rather kind of see us walk through this workflow builder and some of these use cases that Lukas has talked about. But I always say, when in doubt, test it out. So if you want to get your hands dirty, you want to see how the interface works, a trial is a great place to start. Lukas, we super appreciate you coming on and again, sharing so much detail, sharing screenshots. I think that makes it really valuable. So appreciate you so much for that.
No, thank you for making the whole experience really great from start to finish. Really, you've been great here, Cody. And what you just said about like, oh, you're gonna jump back, make your own changes. Like I think I had at least 4 ideas of things I actually want to put in my campaigns while preparing for this call. So I guess
Good.
it's already been a great year.
I love it.
And again, thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Yes. Thank you. We appreciate you staying up late for us too.